Welcome to the Quarter Life Lessons Podcast,
a show on the many relatable lessons learned to and through the journey of adulthood. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Charlia. Let's get started.
All right, Charlia, today we're going to talk about what it means to be a lifelong learner. So before we get too far into the episode, I just want to ask you, starting right off the bat, if you were to define yourself, would you say you are a lifelong learner?
That's a very good question. Automatically, I want to say yes. And I think that started when I was in college. I started as a nursing major, but I had to take an intro to philosophy class, and it changed my whole life. Because I felt like I had never learned before in a way. Like, I was really good at memorizing things for a test, but I quickly forgot them. And I feel like I didn't have a lot of my own perspective. Like it came from outside sources. So like, just what my family believed, or I didn't really do a lot of research to why I felt the way I felt about my opinions. So yeah, I think that learning philosophy and then later changing that to be my major really developed that love of learning, which is what philosophy translates to, is a love of learning. And I do feel like it would be a life journey, because I don't exactly feel fulfilled if there's not something learning or critical thinking happening.
Nice. Yeah, when we were preparing for this, before this episode, if someone said, are you a lifelong learner, or do you define yourself as a lifelong learner? Like you automatically, oh yeah, for sure. But the great thing about this is just, I think lifelong learners are always interested in challenging themselves. Now, everyone brings their own insecurities to things. But today, since you and I both identify as lifelong learners, I'm challenging us to go through this list of top 10 things that are part of life for lifelong learners, and just take a bit of an inventory. And so for all the thrivers out there listening, if you want to hear more, this is from an article from Point Loma Nazarene University in San Diego, California. And it is the 1 through 10, or the top 10 list of things you can do to live like a lifelong learner. So number 1 here, as we dive in, is nurture a growth mindset. So lifelong learning is just as much about your mindset as it is about particular actions you take. That's why it's important to nurture the growth mindset and see your life through the lens of self-development. So that sounds great, but what is the growth mindset?
According to the Harvard Business School, someone with a growth mindset views intelligence, ability, and talents as learnable and capable of improvement through effort. On the other hand, someone with a fixed mindset views those same traits as inherently stable and unchangeable over time.
That's so powerful, because someone with a fixed mindset might think that leadership is something you're born with, whereas someone with a growth mindset might think of leadership as something that you grow to be more capable of through experience and through the journey. That's the first one that it makes me think of, is because a lot of times people think, well, I'm a born leader, right, or not, right? Yeah. But I think remembering that we have control over our self-talk and over our mindset and our worldview, and that we're responsible for crafting and kind of building those things over time. So the number 1 thing you need to have to live like a lifelong learner is a natural growth mindset. So choosing that growth mindset. In other words, you inherently seek out opportunities for learning as you go through life. This helps establish you as an active participant in your learning journey. So what do you think, Charlia? Do you have a growth mindset?
I try my best to take responsibility and be self-aware. And if I'm aware of something, to then take action. But I do have to say, Stephanie, like, sometimes especially when I was younger, I was a little reluctant to the growth mindset. And I think it's from fear of when that responsibility hits, like you are now responsible. Like once you know, you can either, choose to be blissfully ignorant or you have to start making moves. Like you got to start being accountable.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, I think when you talk about advocacy, for sure, right? When you say blissfully ignorant, you don't know the power struggles or the institutional disadvantages or whatnot that are out there. And if you sit in the growth mindset and you grow yourself in that direction and you learn about these inequities, then pretending they don't exist, it's negligent versus, if you had never learned about them. I don't know, we're not here to say right or wrong, obviously. But that is a really big moral conundrum. Like, should I stay in my fixed mindset and only know what I've been told? Mm-hmm. Or should I make myself uncomfortable and use that growth mindset to go and learn all that I can possibly learn? And then what am I going to do about it? If I learn something that's a call to action, that's got to be a topic for another day for sure. But I think that's so awesome. That right there, I think, proves that us and this podcast and the thrivers out there, we're at least interested in the growth mindset. Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, number 2 thing from the article about being a lifelong learner is don't be afraid to welcome new challenges. Learning can be beneficial, but it's not always easy. It most often involves embracing new challenges and discomfort. However, it can also lead to great rewards. Lifelong learners actively embrace change and refuse to hold on to only what's familiar, always seeking opportunities to challenge themselves. That connects right into what we just talked about with the growth mindset. Thrivers out there, if you're on the fence about growth mindset and as you thought to yourself, ways that you get uncomfortable, then I think number 2 really speaks to you is seeking out the uncomfortability, the challenges, opportunities to either prove your thoughts and feelings or disprove maybe some of those beliefs that you'll hold on to. Number 3, take ownership of your future. And I think this is kind of what Charlia, you touched on, but lifelong learning requires you to be proactive about your future. You have to be one to take ownership of your goals and aspirations, as well as your quality of life in the present. Lifelong learners take this matter into their own hands to seek out learning opportunities that will better help them to reach their goals. This sense of responsibility and ownership connected to what you've learned is really what I think that you mentioned before. And that's another tick mark, Charlie. You are a trending lifelong learner over there. I think this one speaks to me particularly because I really enjoy goals and kind of goal setting and strategic planning and that kind of thing. And knowing that you have to be present in those moments as well. And yes, thinking large, big, and aspirational, but also realistic. Yes. It's kind of a 2-phase. You really have to balance those as well.
Yeah, huge point on being present. And again, we're bringing in some pretty large themes that we'll go into detail on later, probably in its own episode. But being present is very important when you're talking about anything that has to do with moving forward. Because how do you kind of know where you are? Or how do you have a benchmark of what you are learning or growing and doing if you're too busy in the past or too busy in the future?
Such a great point. Yeah, that personal inventory. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that benchmark or foundation or number on the scale or height on the wall, whatever it is of where you are today and doing that work, then you can't have a fair assessment or fair understanding or awareness of the work you've done to move ahead or heal or, whatever those are, the tangibles or the emotional benefits. So taking the personal inventory and being present to take account of what's going on is so crucial to determine the direction you've grown or things like that. That's a really great point. So number 4, incorporate reading into your daily routine. So right there, I come to a bit of a screeching halt Most of my life doesn't, postgraduate school doesn't involve textbooks or many books that I pick up regularly outside of work. So incorporate reading into your daily life has a little tiny red stop sign next to it. But then I was thinking, I found this article and I read this article and I have audiobooks and I have podcasts, and those aren't exactly reading, but it is a way that you integrate or inject outside thoughts and challenges into your life.
Yeah, I think, yes, it's important to set aside other time just for reading, especially if that's something that speaks to you. But I think we can give ourselves a little more credit. I mean, the countless amount of emails just in one day, that is reading. So I think it's a little more. I think what this list is referring to is to do a little bit extra than what you do on a regular basis, which, yeah, if you have and can make time for, I think that's great. But I don't. Not on purpose, anyways.
So yeah, they call it out as incorporating reading into your daily routine is an easy and convenient way to gain access to new knowledge. I think there are other ways to gain access to new knowledge personally. Reading can be a way for you to challenge previously held mindsets or update your knowledge regarding a particular subject. So in here, they're talking about reading, but I think it's really more about that new knowledge or access to someone else's experience or something that connects with you. And think about thoughts and how they sometimes kind of make you think to the next thing, the kind of mind links that you make.
Yeah.
Basically, when you hear something that makes you think of something you've experienced or that you know, or a question you have, and this kind of non-linear bouncing around of new ideas, I think that's what reading and accessing new knowledge can do for the lifelong learner.
Now that I hear what they have to say about reading, I might challenge my no, but it's still a challenge for me.
Yes. Okay, number 5, develop your time management skills. Let's face it can be difficult to carve out time to dedicate to learning. That's why time management skills are so important to nurture and develop for the lifelong learner. Perhaps it means waking up 30 minutes early so you can spend time completing that course you signed up for, or maybe you can plan to go to bed 15 minutes earlier than usual so you can get some reading done. Dedicating a certain amount of time to learning each week will go a long way towards improving your quality of life. That is a big life management skill. Time management in general. You can get so productive, like we talked about before, where you end up eliminating any self-care, rest, or recovery time. But you can also sometimes get totally sucked into social media or totally sucked into social commitments that you also don't have time for self-care or recovery or that project that's coming up. So it's such a balance. And they call it time management, which is great, but maybe that might have some negative connotations for people. It feels kind of like something you do at work, maybe, or like school.
Like a chore.
Yeah, like a chore. But I think it's really speaking to the balance, the intentional balance of seeing your time as a resource.
Yeah.
And that happens, I think, when you're maturing a little bit more. Yes, I think when you're in your 20s and you're in that first job, or you're maybe starting out in college, time management is about getting your studying done.
Right.
But after you're done with those experiences, I think you realize that time management is really just an accounting of your energy.
Yes.
And the balancing of where you invest your time. And I will say again, I identify as a lifelong learner. So far, I've felt pretty on par with 1 through 5, except maybe reading. This one, I don't know that you can ever say, I'm the best time manager I can be. I don't know. But knowing that you need it, I think is that awareness is so critical.
Again, going with the energy exchange, because, like you had said, time management can have a negative connotation, and I think that's because there's not really any class in regular K through 12 that you take that's like, this is how you use a planner. And not only do you write in the planner, you do what the planner said you were going to do. But also, it really is important to know where your energy is going, because if you get stuck in a lot of mindset loops, that takes up a lot of time. I definitely used to procrastinate or am working through recovering from procrastinating or trying to, just because of the simple amount of pressure that I was putting on things. That takes a lot of time away from anything that you could be trying to get to on time or just trying to leave the house. And again, it's a little bit of that perfectionism in me, I feel like, that makes that one pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think, and then once you start to be more aware, like you said before, I know it's not about inequities, but once you're aware that you have a time management problem, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And I think it's that awareness and trying not to be too hard on yourself, but knowing that you want to grow in this direction and taking those daily or weekly inventories of where did I invest my time and energy today?
Yeah.
Is that what I want to continue doing? Good points. All right, number 6 from the list, nurture your passions. Lifelong learners seek to learn more about themselves as well as their desires and goals, and they take action towards pursuing them. They are not afraid to pursue passion, even if it's for a limited amount of time. Nurturing your passions is a great way for you to get some well-deserved off time to do something you enjoy. This is really interesting too, because lifelong learner, maybe you're a lifelong learner that all you spend in your off time, like I'm going to say off time for me because I'm talking about work, very traditional kind of 9 to 5. But if all you do is think about work in your off time, you're not giving yourself that kind of pursuit of your passion and maybe exploring the new knowledge we talked about in areas adjacent to your work, which I really love when an idea that I never thought was connected to my career comes out of some creative ether some way, and then it is linked to something I've been quandering or frustrated with in a completely different way. And that doesn't always have to be work. It could be, like I said, listening to podcasts, going to a lecture, going to something creative like an art show or a play, and taking something you felt or learned in that venue and applying it to an area that's completely offset from that, whether it's a personal relationship, a spiritual relationship, or work. And I think nurturing your passion sometimes leads you down a way that maybe is connected to something like work or your self-development or whatever it is.
There's been a lot of development in nurturing my passions, not only to figure out what those are, but also just finding that balance of how much I need to address those passions to feel like I am thriving, to feel like I am not just going to work and coming home and going to sleep and doing it again. That monotony really takes a toll on my mental health. And this one's really important because this is kind of where I feel like we can start to see the beauty in other things just because we give ourselves a break to see things that we enjoy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even if you don't know what you're passionate about yet, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, looking for new knowledge, experiencing things you don't know you might like, and that uncertainty, I think, is a nice way to start to look for the tingles or the interest of passion, especially if you haven't found something that feels that, I don't know, passionate for you. Mm-hmm. I also recently heard someone say, you don't have to, focus on your passions or work in your passions. What you should do is think about things you're really good at and then try to see where that takes you. So let's just say someone's really good at writing and they're like, I feel like I'm a very competent writer. I've been complimented on my writing. I enjoy writing. Well, then see what things touch the concept of writing. Is it more writing for entertainment? Is it writing for poetry? And then kind of do like deductive analysis there or something. But you don't have to feel guilty or bad if there's not something that just lights you up and it's like, oh, I'm passionate about this thing. Don't let that make you feel guilty. Sometimes it's a bit of work to figure out those passions, and I think you'll be happy having done the work and found your way to something that really inspires you. So to do some of that, this article talks about you want to reflect on some of your activities, like the things you like to do outside of work, or what you are particularly passionate about. Next, get together with people who love those same activities that you do. It's a great way to nurture the passion and keep it as active, as well as learn from others, who may know more about that topic than you do. If you don't have friends that enjoy the same activity, don't worry. It's just a quick Google search to find local communities, social media, venues, or digital communities who have the same interests that you do. So that's a part of nurturing your passion. Finding them, identifying them, finding communities that share them, and like I said, learning along the way.
Yeah, quick call to action for you thrivers. That quick Google search can either lead you down a pathway with a lot of opportunities, or it may show that locally you might not have as many things in a specific field that you're interested in. I do challenge you, go ahead and start that thing. I'm almost positive that there are other people who would love to join that journey with you.
Yeah, that's true. One time I was telling a friend about the kind of community I wanted to join, or the kind of like women I wanted to be around, and I couldn't find where they were, or they weren't doing the things that I wanted them to do. And this friend said, well, why don't you just create it? And I thought, I'm not going to ever forget that he said that to me, because it felt like what you are talking about is valuable and you should go find it, or you should go do it.
Yeah.
And then I ended up not exactly doing that exact thing, but it was a really big moment for me because I felt like I had permission to create a thing that I was looking for.
Yes.
And so I think, what we're saying to you thrivers is go test the waters. And if you don't find the right fit, then build it yourself and invite folks in. The water's warm kind of thing. Number 7, embrace your curiosity. As a lifelong learner, it's important that you nurture your sense of curiosity and keep an open mind about the world. Be open to brand new experiences and don't be afraid to go through the uncomfortable process of learning something new. Constantly seek out knowledge to help satisfy your curiosity. Charlia, are you curious?
Yes.
You are?
I think so.
Good. That's really good. I'm a curious person too, although I won't say I'm as curious as my husband, who immediately looks everything up on YouTube. But I'm curious in different ways. I'm curious about people and what they think, curious about history and kind of the things that are built in my community and how they're connected. And there's obviously lots of ways to be curious. What are some of the things you're most curious about?
Wow. That is a large question for a critical overthinker. But some things that I am curious about. I think one thing that I am eagerly curious about is religious history and the impact that it has on today, and how different people practice different things that are sacred to them, and the origins and the origin stories behind those various gatherings and celebrations and things of the sort. I don't know where that came from. But yeah, it's always just been a quirk of mine. Like, if there's a documentary about something of the sort, like some ritual or something similar, I'm watching it immediately. Like, I'm dropping everything. I want to see what they have to tell me.
There you go. You are nurturing your passions and embracing your curiosity right there. Okay, now number 8 on the list, understand the need for rest and self-care. So thrivers, if you remember our previous episode on rest and recovery, here is another way that important topic finds its way into the life of the lifelong learner. So life can't just be about being busy or productive. It is important for lifelong learners to know when it's time to take a good break and take care of themselves. This could be through regular physical activity, meditation, or sometimes simply doing nothing for an hour or two. It's also important to get some well-deserved sleep. Your brain will have a harder time processing new information if it is not well rested. As we talked about in that episode, it's so important to strike a balance here. Don't get into that recovery deficit and find a loss there. And if you do, make sure that you're taking the time to go through both recovery, rest, and keep yourself well taken care of, just so you can process all of the new information and bring more of yourself to the presence of that learning experience so that you get the most out of the learning experience, but you also bring your whole self to the learning experience and people can learn from you.
Yes, that's huge talking about bringing your whole self.
Yeah.
Because, again, an unrested, unrecovered person is pouring from an empty cup, whether that is mentally or just being present in whatever activity is going on.
Also, bringing your whole self can sometimes mean don't let fear make you hide yourself, or
Yes.
don't give in if possible. Now, people do this for lots of reasons to keep themselves safe,
Right.
but you don't have to act a certain way, or at least in the circles that I'm looking for. I don't know how every thriver is out there looking for experiences in the world, but as a lifelong learner, I'm looking for experiences for people to be their whole selves. So if they're having a rough day and we need to divert from the topic at hand and address that rough day, or if they have a different religion or culture than I do, I don't need them to hide themselves. And that's just me personally. And I know there's a lot of people out there who would support that as well. But not only look for the circles and platforms and avenues that allow people to be their whole selves, but be the kind of person that welcomes and embraces people when they bring their whole self.
Yeah, if I'm hearing you correctly, I think you're saying don't be afraid to take up space to be authentic, and don't be afraid to look for spaces where you can show up authentically.
Yes. Yes. Number 9, understand that learning must be pursued with intention. As we grow into adulthood and acquire more knowledge, it can be easy to rest on what you already know and become complacent. That's why it's important to understand that learning must be pursued with purpose and intention. This is my favorite one on the list, I think. Yeah, it is easy, like we talked about in the very beginning before we dove down this rabbit hole, to rest on your laurels, rest on the fact that somebody taught you enough to take care of yourself in the world. Good enough. But I think the distinction of lifelong learners is that that's not good enough, and they're actually passionate in whatever avenue it takes them to learn more and contribute more, and then, like you said, change or modify their views or their approaches to different things as they learn new subjects, new topics.
Yeah, again, just taking the action to move forward.
Yeah. So the article says you can do this by setting certain goals for your day, your week, your month, or your year. Make a list of activities that you'd like to pursue or habits that you'd like to implement, and add those to your schedule. Even if it doesn't keep up with these habits perfectly, adding a little extra learning time to each day can go a long way towards a better life. Number 10 here talks a little bit about taking courses, engaging in education, whether that's through the internet or YouTube, that's the internet as well, but local community colleges, back at a university, through a church, through a political organization, through a maker space, or any one of these kind of community level learning organizations. Take programming. Go to that panel, go to that art show, whatever it is. Go to the moms group, go to the singles group. Seek the structured information, but also seek organic information. But at the same time, don't get too overwhelmed, because I tend to overwhelm people. And I guess to me, number 10 is talking about, again, that intentionality. And if it's going to be the 30 minutes of self-reflection added to the morning or a couple of times in the week, that's fine. But you should also maybe seek more formal instruction as well. Because education can be formal, informal, and non-formal. And the difference there being formal education is like in that traditional like teacher-student role. Non-formal is when you learn from your peers and it's not structured whatsoever. And then not formal is just learning things along life's journey. Just things that you pick up that aren't structured.
I don't know. I feel like there's probably a lot of other thrivers who are lifelong learners who relate to this. It's something about taking a good set of notes that really makes me excited.
Something to whip out the highlighter for?
Yes, just make a heading and have subheadings and everything is just in line. I think it's the aesthetic of the whole thing that I love taking notes whenever I can. I don't even always use them, but just having a place to be able to take notes from is really beneficial to me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As always, the conversation does not end here. We want to know your thoughts on these topics. Join us on Instagram at quarterlifepod to share your perspective and continue the conversations to thrive. Thank you for tuning in to the Quarter Life Lessons podcast. Find new episodes every month on Spotify, YouTube, and our Buzzsprout website.